Thanks for joining us. I'm Katie Lang.
And I'm George Mallet. First, it's a KIMT News 3 exclusive. Breaking tonight for the first time in 22 years, another prominent person of interest in the Jody Huisentruit disappearance is speaking out.
Tony Jackson wasn't originally connected to the case when Jody went missing from Mason City in June of 1995. But 2 years later, Jackson was arrested and accused of raping 4 women in 18 days in Minneapolis. The two may not seem connected, but a detective shortly realized Jackson was living in Mason City at the time the former KIMT News 3 anchor disappeared. Now, KIMT News 3's George Mallet is sitting down with the man who seemed to get Jackson to break his decades-long silence. But George, this isn't the first time that this has actually happened.
Yeah, this is really fascinating, Katie. It was just 7 days ago we broke the news that the other prominent person of interest, John Van Cise, was opening up to Steve Ridge about a new medical diagnosis. But when it comes to talking to Jackson, it was quite a different experience.
I didn't know what to expect. And when you go through that solid steel gate and it closes behind you, and then you go through the one into the next cell and on into the next one, your anticipation level grows very high.
Steve Ridge, the head of the Frank Magid TV consulting firm's investigative arm, is talking about his entrance into the state pen in Rush City, Minnesota, where he landed an exclusive interview with this man, Tony DeJuan Jackson. It turns out the now convicted rapist was living just 2 blocks from KIMT's studios in Mason City at the time of Jody Huisentruit's disappearance.
He actually became a person of interest after the events that happened in Minneapolis. At the time that he was in Mason City, he really wasn't on anybody's radar.
Like the other key person of interest in the Huisentruit case, John Van Cise, Jackson spoke exclusively with Ridge. Ridge isn't sure why he's emerged as the confidant of these men, but it isn't because he treats anybody with kid gloves.
I looked Tony in the eyes and I said, "Tony, am I looking into the eyes of a killer?" And he said, no, you're not. And I said, you know, did you abduct Jody Huisentruit? And he answered no. And I went through several iterations of, did he know anything? Did he know where her body was? And, you know, he denied all of those. But I asked him the tough questions.
Well, Jackson has been sentenced to life in prison for the 4 rapes and tells Ridge he feels immense remorse for what he did. He says he prays for his victims as well as Jody every day.
All right. Thank you, George. And coming up on KIMT News 3 at 10, a look at where the investigation into Jody's disappearance could go from here. Well, beginning tomorrow, parking is going